Good morning, folks. Good morning. I'm going to start this all over again. No, actually, I'll leave it the way it is. My hearing aids are in. I hear just fine, but I'm going to use the microphone on the phone this morning. I think it sounds better than these Bluetooth hearing aids do, coupled up to the phone. At least when I play it back, it sounds better to me. I think it's a little bit better sounding for you. It is. My Lord, I slept in. It's 5:39. The dog has been outside. It's getting warmer out there. It's getting too warm for me to run this heater up here. We'll just stop the oscillation so it sits in the middle of the room rather than comes on my legs so closely. Forgive me for yawning. I slept pretty good. I've been trying to improve my sleep. Good morning, America. What do we have in common? Well, I'm what's left of me after 70 years, and you're what's left of you after what? How many years has America been around? Where do we measure from? Excuse me. I'd have to say there's not much left of you either. It bothers me. I don't really like getting older. But you as a nation, I don't know, it's getting really strange in this country today. We're not surprised at what we see anymore. Not much surprises us. And we're numb. We're kind of paralyzed. We have that in common. I have some physicians who haven't treated me very well, haven't taken care of me very well. They take care of themselves quite well. They lie in their damn records, too. And that's what's happened to you as well. Your historians have lied in your records, especially these people that are being appointed by this peculiar administration. And everybody seems to realize that crimes have occurred and there's no remedy. None at all. Well, with the strength of Yahweh, maybe I'll get off a couple of letters today that I need to get off. I don't like entering into business, walking into even business places anymore, because it used to be that almost all transactions went really well. When I was a little boy, everybody shook hands, everybody understood each other. And the adage, the customer was always right, held water. It held ground. It gave us all a foundation. And the crazy thing is, people back then met with their customers. Even the head of businesses met with customers. They went out of their way to satisfy the littlest needs. And I don't know what it was. I mean, it wasn't like they were making a lot of money off a particular transaction or a particular relationship, particular customer. They just wanted to do right. Everybody wanted to do right. And then as I got older, I realized that some of my transactions, some of the business things were going south. They weren't going very well. And it was increasing. And it got to a point where half of all the business I engaged in, there were problems with it. And now I would have to say it's more than half. So I don't like walking into a place hardly. I don't want to go. I don't want to hire anybody hardly. I mean, it's like I don't want to engage them. Something goes wrong. It's a combination of a general malaise. It's also a combination of not caring about the other guy or about yourself, not having a good sense of a healthy sense of self. I mean, it's like we have become the people of the lie. We used to pride ourselves upon honesty and rationality, but that's not the case anymore. We pride ourselves upon getting over on the other guy. We have this attitude, if we don't get over on the other guy, we're not going to gain. We've lost ground. We've lost foundation. We've lost understanding. We are no longer of the positive mindset that we can make a deal and both benefit. That just hardly happens. And as a result, you have people like the Trumpster who come along who make a deal that the people want. And everybody treats him like a god. But why? Because he's got kind of a win-win attitude. Oh, don't get me wrong. I don't think he was that great. You all think he was great. I don't think it was that good when he was president. It was okay. It's certainly not ugly like it is today. This is beyond ugly. You see, there's a group of people in the background that have been running things for generations. They pass it down to their families. And the crazy thing is they actually put it in your faces. They put it under your noses. They put their presence right in your face. And they make it obvious. And you can't see it. And I can't see it either for the most part, except at this point, I've been around long enough. I can see it. I don't like them and I don't trust them. They look like mafiosi. They look like mafia dudes. They all wear hats like the mafia guys did. But you got to remember, the mafia was kind of an invention of transwood. Tranny wood, that's what we'll call it. And the crazy thing is, there's this cute girl I watched kind of grow up on Facebook. She's not a woman now. She's had a daughter, had it out of wedlock, and she was kind of gawky and awkward looking. Something was unsettling about her. I mean, she was kind of attractive and not terribly attractive. She was weird. And then she got pregnant, and then she had this baby. And it was like she changed. She changed severely. She got settled down. She was comfortable in herself. Not only that, she was looking very mature, very attractive, not so awkward. It was interesting. From the time she was 19, and I guess she's probably about 24, 25 now. However, she, I thought, was obsessed because she would put up videos or pictures and make statements about people being transgendered. These beautiful Hollywood actresses, Trannywood actresses. That's what we should call the place, is Trannywood. These beautiful actresses turned out to be men. And they set these women up as sex goddesses. So everybody's clamoring because that's the standard. That's what you want. That's what you want to be like. That's what you got to have. That you've got to become. And it's an unreal standard with an ungodly impact on everyone in this country. So it's turning little boys. I don't think there's a proper name for it. It kind of perverts the foundations of beauty, the foundations of attraction, the foundations of what it means to be a woman. Everything. And then I heard from one person make a statement that they hung out in Hollywood and knew a lot of these beautiful people. And what they said is that when you were up front and close, they weren't so beautiful. They looked weird. You know, everybody thinks they're so gorgeous and so beautiful. But when you're up front, close and personal with them, there's something unsettling about them. There's something that doesn't feel right. There's something that's actually extremely ugly. Not just distracting, but there's things about them and they just don't seem right. And it turns out, at least according to one fellow who puts his videos up there, that almost all of these actresses aren't women, they're men. And even in the bikinis and everything else, they'll put them up there. It's to the point now where I look at people and I'm wondering, well, not sure what I'm looking at. It's almost like I can't see a woman hardly anywhere. But I'll tell you, when you see a real woman, and I just have a new friend on Facebook who's really, she's kind of different. We would call her voluptuous today. She'd be regarded as fat. She's got incredible curves, and I don't know about her attitude, but I know she's not a tranny. And the differences are amazing. And when I look at that young woman, she's in the middle of the country. When I look at that young woman, I'm like, I know she's really a woman. I know that she looks feminine. She's got the extra body fat on her, you know. Women are built differently. They've got extra body fat so that they can, for childbearing. You know, that's not easy on a body. It takes a lot of calories and a lot of energy. And I remember seeing one of my cute petite girlfriends when she got pregnant. She got fat in the pictures, and I didn't know she was pregnant. she was getting pretty thick. And I was looking at her thinking, man, it doesn't seem right. I mean, she's gained so much weight. She was so pretty, so petite, like 5'1". And next thing I know, she produces a child. And then her figure starts to go back to normal, and she slims up and gets back to regular body size. And I just marveled because I never had a child. I never had a baby I can't have one, of course, but I never had one with a woman. I never went through a pregnancy, never watched her bloat up and get big and massive and get thick and her body get distorted because she was being invaded by a foreign species, so to speak, you know, invaded by another being. I don't have any idea what that's like. It's got to be comforting. Yet it seems kind of strange in some ways to me because it's like, man, I don't want somebody else living inside my body, but yet there's a woman that's like, oh, that's what she's made for. We men can't do that. And I remember being a little boy, the girls bragged about that. You can't do that. And I guess, you know, the competition was there at an early age. And I was a little bit disappointed because they could do that. They could do that. I couldn't do that. I was like, I felt kind of cheated in a way. I mean, they made a big deal out of it. Today, I really don't. I don't care for that very much. I would not want to be a woman in this society. It's not a lot of fun being a man in this society, but the pressure that's on women, I think, is ridiculous. To be it all and to have it all, and you can do everything. And, you know, being a mother is demeaning. You want to be a professional woman. You don't want to be, you know, demeaned. You want to be respected and looked up to. And don't worry, you can have children later on. You know, just delay that gratification. What a big lie. I look at those women that are my age, slightly younger, that went down those roads of you can delay having a family. You can delay marriage. You can have children later in life. Get your career established. Make some money. And the crazy thing is it's so far against their nature that it betrays them. It certainly belittles them. And these women end up childless, unable to have children, realizing the big lie. That they've been lied to, they've been deceived, that they've given up the opportunity, the time in which they could have children. And I think that that's one of the big lies in this country today. The lie is, 30 years old, no problem. You can still get married, you can still have a family, no problem. And the fact is that the fertility rate has been dropping here because of our bad habits, because of the chemistry, these weird chemicals that we're exposed to all the time that diminish our fertility, diminish our ability to procreate, diminish our health, shorten our lives, sterilize us. And some diseases cause it too. But nature does it. Because a woman's given just so many eggs before she's even born, before she's even well, at the time she started in the womb. That determines how many she's going to have throughout her life. It's fixed. It's fixated. She can't make more than that. That's a limitation. And it was back when our society was healthier, when we had better food on the shelves. I walk into a store today and I look at it and I just marvel at all the boxes and canisters and all that with the poisons. That's what's on the counter. It's poisons. It's designed to give you diabetes. That was programmed into our society. That was engineered into our society. Your food producers, your food processors engineered that into it. No, they didn't have a company mission statement. Let's give them diabetes, let's thicken them up. Let's fatten them for the slaughter. They did not have those overt mission statements. But somewhere behind the scenes, there was an intelligence lurking that was an evil intelligence and designed all this stuff up. I realized this when I was a young man in college. I got a ticket for parking in one of the many restricted zones. And I complained because there was no room for me to park, and there were all of these handicapped parking spaces. There were more handicapped parking spaces than there was anything else in front of this college where I was parked at in the wintertime. And I parked there. And I got a ticket, so I went to court, and the safety officer, the campus police, they showed up. And I told the judge, I says, look, what am I supposed to do? I mean, my other choice was to, park in a fire zone. And there were like 30 spaces out there. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a small parking lot. I don't think there were even a total of maybe 50 spaces there, and 30 of them were for handicapped only. So the judge kind of split the baby. Instead of fining me $150, fined me $20. The fee would be for, parking in the fire zone. That seemed kind of reasonable. But those parking spaces didn't seem reasonable. And so, when the snow's on the ground, they only clear so many of those spaces. So here you've got the parking spaces that are clear, all the handicapped parking spaces. There's nothing for the rest of us. What are we supposed to do? Park a half a mile away and chomp our way through that snow? I mean, that snow gets pretty deep, pretty thick, and it's hard to walk through sometimes. Anyway, I don't mean to make this about me. I'm trying to make it about us. The fact is, I don't stand up for myself, and you don't do that either. So we got that in common. So I don't assert for myself. I'm overly agreeable. I pulled that phrase from Jordan Peterson. He used overly agreeable as one of those criteria. He's better read than I am. He's been in the field more actively, more directly. Of course, they've targeted his ass now, and they're gonna take his license. You can't have a political stance and keep a license, because the boards are nothing but political. And when they find out that you're not a libtard, you're not one of them, you're not a member of the party, then they run you off. They take your license from you. They won't let you work freely. Oh, and they will protect each other in their crimes. That's the way it is across the whole country. If you're a libtard, You protect the other libtards and the crimes that they're doing. It's like a big, giant club. And, of course, I'm glad I'm not a member of that club. But it's pretty sad because America's health, America's psychology it's on the rocks. It's not very good. I would have to say we're more dead than alive today. What do you think? Are we more alive than dead, or are we more dead than alive? I think we're more dead than alive. We've capitulated. We've given in to the evil ones. The evil is overwhelming at this point. I don't know how we keep up. You look at the overall picture of things. Not only does the government have an open border, but they're paying people to come here, and they're putting them up in the better hotels. And so even the cost of lodging has skyrocketed way up, way before the inflation, because the demand is so high. And so these poor folks that end up not being able to keep a roof over their heads certainly can't afford the enslavement of paying a hotel room, and the prices are just out of sight. And of course, it's not one price. They change the rates on the weekends. They jack them up as much as 50% more. That's not a very fair thing when you're dependent upon them. That's not a very fair thing at all. We need to make it illegal to be in the country illegally. We need to stop rewarding this bad behavior. But the Democrats wanted to change the electorate. They wanted to change the base, change the foundations of the nation so they could rule it. And they've succeeded. Since '65, they've been working on diminishing our quality here by mixing us with people, races, species, cultures, languages, belief systems that aren't compatible. They're not compatible. What's that thing in the book of Daniel? As iron mixed with clay, miry clay. I don't know what miry means exactly, but it sounds enmeshed, if you will. It sounds unhealthy. It sounds messy. It sounds like it'll never work. So the foundations have been destroyed. And this is the Babylonian system today. America is the culmination of it. We're probably not just a shithole, a third world nation at this point, because there's no justice here anymore. We've lost the rule of law. We've got insanity at the helm. You've got this angry, oh man, I want to use a horrible word, which I don't think is allowed on this platform, but he is one of those ugly people that really deserves to be called that horrible name. This guy who's in charge of justice in the nation is one of the most unjust people there ever has been. And he is a sick man. He should not be allowed to be in that position. And every time he gets up and he talks, he always talks about when he was a justice. Oh, let's see. Justice. You were a justice. Oh. How'd you lose your seat on the Supreme Court? The only justices I know are justices in the Supreme Court. I don't even think the Supreme Courts of the states, I think those are still called judges. I think that term justice is reserved for the Supreme Court jackasses. And he's butthurt because he didn't get appointed. And he's taking it out on the rest of us. He's an angry man. He's a wicked man. He's full of hate and loathing. And then whenever he gives you an example, it's always an example of a Supreme Court justice and how he'd hold them into account as well. Something like that. You see, he believes he's above the law. And he is at this point. He's your attorney general. He should have been kicked out a long time ago. Actually, he should be charged with his crimes. He should be taken off in irons, hands and feet. And a big one across that mouth of his. I don't want to hear from him again, folks. I really don't. And you think that you're being, magnanimous by accepting such an evil, wicked son of a bitch, such a vile man on there. And he directs his FBI to investigate parents who are trying to take care of their children. Wow. And now they have to investigate Catholics who attend Latin Mass. He hasn't backed off of anything. He always uses the same phrase to let you know that he's being very legalistic about it. You know, angry parents, violent parents, terroristic parents. And these school boards aren't responsive to parents. If you can't protect your children, what good are you? If you don't protect your children, what good are you? Look, these kids have been handed over a long time ago. I look at the conflicts they set up when I was a little boy. And I remember my first day getting oriented as a Jesuit university. They had us all in rooms with a closed-circuit television, and the Jesuit up on the screen basically told us the message, and I got it loud and clear. Your parents don't know anything. We will teach you it all. We will teach you everything. Let's see. There's a principle that's violated with that. And I'll explain this to you. It was explained to me when I was a young budding intern in the bush, working in Bethel, Alaska. The principle is a universal principle, and it fits America more than any other place that I can think of. Once you undermine one authority, you undermine all authority. And as I say this to you, it still rankles me a little bit. I still got a little bit of the rebel in me, I guess, or there's something in me that just, it kind of rankles me. It just irks me. It just doesn't feel that comfortable when I say it. And the sad thing is, it's true. So once you undermine one authority in your civilization, in your culture, you've undermined all the other authorities. So you're undermining the parents, and you're expecting that your authority is going to hold. That's when I started putting things together a little bit better, I think. That's when I started realizing the errors in my way, the rebellious part, and how it was subverting myself and subverting others. So I had another mentor out there, Clyde Ferguson. Tall, handsome black man. He was in charge of the mental health organization next door, the big one, the one I was hoping to work for. They got me out in the bush hoping that they would bring me on there eventually, but they didn't. I ended up getting kind of chased out and going up to Antioch, upriver. The problem for me was one that going out to the bush kind of cured. You know, I am out there to serve people. I'm hired in this job. I'm a counselor. I'm supposed to be supervising and taking care of people that are living in well, at that point, I guess I would call it a developmentally disadvantaged group. A group that just couldn't quite grow up fully. They weren't that mature. They were like children, grown children. Of course, I was talking to my roommate, my buddy, the other day, and we mentioned the natives. And the one thing we agree upon is that they're innocent. They have an innocence about them. They're like permanent children. I mean, they really are very innocent. And as such, we really have to protect them. I mean, we have to give them a little bit more latitude. Their view of reality is different. It's never going to be the same. They're far more pragmatic and practical than we are. They see things for what they are better than we do. We're a lot crazier than they are for sure. They are a lot more down to earth. And they have a different understanding. And one of the understandings they have is that when a man drinks and does something, he's not himself. His spirit has been altered. And so it was like universal. If a man was charged with a crime and he went to court and this native guy, well, it was usually a guy, okay. If this native fellow that got into trouble, there's the same bias in their culture as in our culture. For some reason, we don't charge the women, the little girls up. We let them get away with everything. We let them get away with murder. They only get a 7-year sentence compared to the 20, 21 years average for the man. I mean, we do let them get away with murder when you come down to the sentences given out to women for the same crime. And these folks, if you get into court and the fellow was drunk when he did it, the rest of the natives hold him not responsible, not guilty. He wasn't himself. That wasn't him. And you know, I mean, you might think that that's odd, that's weird. How can you do that? But there's a certain politeness about it. There's a certain reality about it that's actually kind of quaint and kind of nice. And I realized that if a native was on that jury, the guy was going to be found out guilty. They would never be able to see him as guilty, never be able to hold him responsible, no matter how bad the crime was, no matter how horrible what he did. And the crazy thing is that, yeah, he wasn't himself. He wouldn't do that if he wasn't out of his mind. And natives can drink. You know, this misconception they can't handle their alcohol. My God, I had a few people out in the bush that straightened me out on that rather quickly. No, man, when they drank. And they drank for months sometimes. I don't think that forgive me, a white man could survive what they went through, what they put their bodies through. I mean, when they drank, they drank. I couldn't drink that way. Hell, I'd die of poisoning. Way, way before them. So this idea that, well, they can't process their alcohol because they lack an enzyme to do it and all that, well, there might be a basis for that, but I would really have to get in there and study that again, because the reality out there was that when they drank, they put it away. They spent a lot of money on this stuff. And we have to agree they are innocent and they're like children. They're not as crazy as the rest of us are. They actually are more pragmatic, more straight ahead. There's less dualism there. There's a more unified being, a more honest approach. And yeah, we talk too much. They're right. And when I was doing therapy with the natives, I didn't realize how to do it best. I mean, once I figured out that you don't want to do it in the office, it doesn't work there. And then I figured out, and I look back at it now and I realize this is what Clyde was doing with me. Clyde was taking me out, taking me under his wing, and he was helping me. He wanted me to establish myself and to grow. You know, I was part of, well, I was part of the establishment, part of the authorities out there. You know, it was my job that if somebody was doing bad stuff, I had to report some of those by law. And I did as I was required, and I got in a lot of trouble for that. I got targeted by that, as a matter of fact. And there were some things that went down that were not very good, but I was protecting villagers. You know, I was protecting little girls. I was protecting older ones as well. I was protecting people. I had to. I had that authority. It was my responsibility. One time my boss wasn't available. He was on vacation, and I wished I could have called him up, because he would have told me how to handle things better than what I did. And I got manipulated by my supposedly native counterpart. who I was supposed to be underneath me, but she didn't want to work with me. She wanted to work with Chuck, and I can't blame her. Chuck had white hair. Chuck was quite a bit older than I was, much more mature. Chuck had a great sense of humor. He understood Native culture. He was a very open-minded man who had been well educated. And I really liked working under him, but this woman decided she wanted to get rid of me, and she set me up. And she was very effective. And I ended up running crossways with the local politicians, with the guy who was in charge of the tribe, basically. But one of the things I loved about Clyde is once in a while I'd say, let's take a plane ride. And I don't know how, but I mean, he had access to those planes. And we'd get in the plane and they'd fly us over. And I mean, it wasn't very far, but you had to get there by plane pretty much. I mean, it might have been just 30 miles away, but that's how you got across the rivers and everything. And we'd go visit one of these little villages. And Clyde showed me what to do. The first thing you do when you land is you check in with the local police, the local village safety officer, local law enforcement. You showed up in their office. It was the polite and civil thing to do. You checked in with them, and they got to look you over and see what you were doing, and they kind of got to approve you. You know, it was like, and you gave them the respect that was due, because if you're going to get in trouble in there, they're going to get you out of it, hopefully. And then after that, after you check in with those, you check in with the mayor, you know, with the civilian authority for the village. And the mayors appreciated that. Well, we're just saying hi, basically. But it was a ritual, if you will. And then after that, he taught me, you go find the local chief. And then I figured out, you don't just check in with the local chief. You find the local wise woman, too. And when you check in with her, that's when you've got divine protection. That's when everything comes into play, because when she knows that you're there for her and for her people, she'll make sure that everything is taken care of for you. She's got the power. She, in her unofficial capacity, or maybe the village chief's wife, or former wife, ex-wife. They have a lot of divorce out there. She'll appreciate that. And then when they have trouble, they will turn to you. And they know they can depend upon you, and you will take care of them. You'll do the right thing. And that's what they need. They need that dependability. However, you do not get that authority. You don't take that authority for yourself. You are given that authority. There's a vast difference. And of course, I remember up at Joathluk, means the place of big blueberries. Little village, very quaint village, maybe 100 people, 100 souls in there. They hired a village safety officer. This kid was tall. He was like 19 years old. And I don't know if he was a white kid or what. He was tall. He was good looking, and he had his girlfriend. I think she was native. Maybe it was his wife. And they hired him as a village safety officer. I don't know how old he was, but I think back about it, he was a young guy. He took his job seriously. And I remember hanging out with another fellow out there. Actually, the fellow who owned the courthouse, basically, and rented the buildings to the court. He owned the whole building, and he lived upstairs. I don't remember his name, but he was a half-crazy guy, a white guy who... he had a drinking problem, and his buddy was an Irish setter, this big red dog, Toby, that he would tease. And Toby, I swear to God, Toby understood every word that we said. Toby was an amazingly bright dog. And he had a cabin upriver, as well as he was in Antioch. Antioch was kind of an odd place, had a huge runway in it. The sad thing is there were a lot of cancers, and it turned out it was from the old Nike sites and the old fuels that were allowed to seep into the ground that caused a lot of cancer. And they had a huge runway in it. I mean, they could land 727s on it or something. They could land the big old jets on this thing. It was so big. And the whole village was built on a loop around the runway. And natives mixed there. They didn't mix very well, by the way. They didn't like each other. They were racist as hell. They discriminated against each other. And sadly, like any other population, being so close, so much in proximity, they would intermarry. And the children would be, they wouldn't be accepted. They wouldn't be accepted by either of the tribes they were coming from, either of the species they were coming from, races. I don't give a damn what you want to call them, clans. But they were mixes, and they weren't considered acceptable by the either groups. And it was sad to watch that happen. It was really sad. When you're living in a fishbowl like that, you get to see these things, and you get to watch the dynamics. My village safety officer up at Strathbelug, I was hanging out with the fellow who owned the courthouse building, and he was in a tear. He was drinking. He had a couple native girls with him. I won't go into all that. That was kind of an embarrassing moment where I forgot how I had been trained and prepared, and forgot the culture and how to be respectful in it. Ah, man. Anyway. There are different ways. They can ask you things directly that you can't ask. You don't dare do what they do in our culture. As a matter of fact, I got out there in Bethel, and one of my clients, one of my kids, if you will, an adult, somebody come to my office and tell me, you got to get so-and-so out of API, Alaska Psychiatric Institute. And of course, it's the first time I heard that I had somebody in API. I mean, they're a long ways from home. We got to get them back. They need to be with their buddies in this large group adult setting. And it was a good thing they set up out there. It was really good. And they weren't really mentally ill. They were just developmentally delayed. And I'll be darned. I had a guy in prison, if you will, in Alaska Psychiatric Institute. And I had to learn the culture and why he got committed. Yeah, we're going to go there. It's kind of a cute story. And this guy was really pretty doggone innocent, and he did what was right and proper. And as a result, he got committed to Alaska Psychiatric Institute because of the cultural clash, if you will. And there was a white woman who was working in her yard, the story goes. And he walked up, and I can't say it here, I just can't. The natives don't have synonyms. They don't have polite words like making love, having sex. They call it the basic four-letter F word, with an ing on the end of it. That's what it is. They don't mince their words. And the thing is that it is considered respectful in their culture to walk up and propose having sex. I mean, it's just like you're saying hello to somebody. And of course, we folks would go, what? What? That's so uncouth. That's so, there's no class in that. You don't just walk up and ask somebody. Oh, yeah, you do. You walk up and ask directly. And guess what? You're required to give them an answer. It doesn't matter what the answer is. But failing to give them an answer is insulting. That's what I did up in the judge's, the courthouse owner's apartment with one of the women. And she was pretty inebriated, and I'm there thinking, I don't know who's my next client. I have to be careful. I can't just be irresponsible here, and I don't want any trouble anyway. Um, she was so drunk she was unattractive, and she was demanding. And my buddy was busy playing with Toby. Toby wanted to eat. He filled his bowl up with food, and my friend was so drunk he's sitting on the dog's bowl, teasing his dog, not letting the dog get to his food. And the dog's like a little child to him, little put off, wants at his food. Oh man, it was funny, but it was kind of sad that he was so blown away, and both girls were blown away. And I did my best to leave, and my buddy's yelling at me, "You don't understand. She means it." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." It's kind of creepy if you ask me, but I didn't say that. I just was kind of speechless. And I forgot. All I had to do was say yes or no. But I said no, no problem. But here I am in Bethel. I'm head of this Bethel Community Services. It's a living place for adults. Bethel's kind of the hub of a large area. And so these people that needed help and their assistance and weren't making it in the villages, kind of run out of the villages, they were in Bethel, the big village. And they had shelter, housing, food, and companionship. They had great companionship, and they looked out for each other. It was very, very touching. They were good people. And this woman or man comes in and tells me, "You got to get this guy out. He's been an API for so long," and I'd been there for a while myself, and nobody ever told me that I had somebody incarcerated basically in the psych hospital. I'm like, oh my God. This is back in the old hospital before they built the new one. So I get on the phone. I talk to those people. I make all the phone calls, and I get them back. And I get them off the airplane in Bethel. Oh, man. I felt so relieved that I had done my job, discovered this guy that everybody forgot about, and he was so glad to be back, and his friends were there to greet him. What was his crime? What was his sin? He walked up to a middle-aged white woman who was working in her yard. Evidently it was summertime. And I'm getting him out of prison like in February, January, so he's been gone for a while. It was more than 6 weeks he was over there, and he didn't belong there. What did he do? He walked up and he proposed having sex, straight up. And what does she do? She calls the village, the public authorities. She calls the police up, and the police arrest him. And they decide they don't know what to do with him, so they're going to send him to Alaska Psychiatric Institute. It was a cultural misunderstanding. He was acting respectfully in their culture. He made the proposal straight up. All it required was a straight up and down answer, yes or no. This was a married woman, I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember the particulars. It's been quite a while. That was back in about 1996. Anyway, 95. Yeah, 95. Anyway, he asked straight up, and that became a crime. Geez, I look at it today, and I'm thinking the way society is today, the way it's changed so much, our culture has deteriorated, and their culture looks more sane to me all the time. It almost makes me want to go back to the village and hang out there. It's simpler out there, but there are some things that were not very good, and it's kind of hard on one's head to be isolated like that. And you have to think differently. So, no, I'm not going to go back out to the bush. I need more services than what's available there. Definitely more health services than what they have available out there. I didn't think I'd be talking about that this morning with you at all. We have got a mix of cultures in this country and a clash of cultures. And the people that run this country, both those formally and those behind the scenes, decided to destroy America. That's why they opened up the floodgates and brought in all of these incompatible types. And they're demanding we respect their cultures. You know, they can mutilate their female children. That's okay because it's part of their culture and we're supposed to respect that. I'm sorry. Why don't they just stay in their own country and do that stuff? Don't bring it here. We don't want it. Treat our children differently. And don't tell us that we have to hold your ways equal to our own. We like the way we are. Don't you like the way you are? We like the way our people are. We like the stability. Well, we had stability. And obviously you didn't like your own country, your own people enough, so you came over here. Yeah. I think Trump was telling us indirectly that we were a shithole, that that's what we've been made into. We don't have justice here. It's worse than a third world nation. We are crazier than the Mexicans are. The Mexicans at least know that their government officials are corrupt. They're all taking the bribe. They take the silver. They all take the money. They do preferential treatment down there. It's almost like a hidden tax. I don't like going there because I don't know where the line is. I would hate to be arrested by a police officer for trying to bribe him when I was told, oh, you got to carry a $20 bill in your hand and shake hands with him and give him a tip. I don't know. I don't want to try it. I don't want to go there. I would like America to occupy that entire country. I'd like to take out all the drug stuff that's going on down there. I'd like to clean that place up so that the average person has a chance of having a decent life right there. I'd like to use the entire country for a buffer zone to protect my own country. Don't need no damn stupid-ass wall. We just need laws and a will to enforce the law. That's all we need. We're not allowed to have that anymore because it's racist. You want to see racism, you go down to Mexico and you'll see it. You will find that the people that are higher educated, that are in government, are different than the people that are out in the distant villages. You will find that they look down upon them. You will also find, if you look hard enough and long enough, you will find that the human sacrificing wasn't that long ago. That's a long-held tradition and it's probably still practiced down there at times. That's okay, we do it up here too. Look at those babies you sacrifice to that God. Look at the devil. You sacrifice your children, innocent blood to him all the time in this country. That's why you have an illegal alien up here that you get to support because you murdered one of God's precious ones. Sorry, but the moment of conception is when life begins. It's when that soul enters that body, and that's when you're violating God's law, taking that life. I didn't think of it that way when I was a youngster. I even wrote papers about how weird it was because a doctor could be charged with a crime if the woman decided she had felt quickening. So he could be charged with murder. So we had to liberalize the abortion laws. I'm disappointed in myself when I realized I wrote papers in support of that. And of course, the liberal teachers applauded that. Basically, I wrote a paper undermining my own nation, undermining my own people. We are in big trouble in this country. We have undermined one authority, and as a result, we've undermined all authority. When you undermine the authority of the parents, what do you expect? You've destroyed your foundations. So these teachers who insist that they know better than parents, that they're going to teach parents, teach children, and to the exclusion of all input from the parents, It's not going to be able to stand. I would like to see the educational system. I'd like to see an amendment saying no government education, no government interference in education. Maybe allow it at the state levels, but certainly not coordinated at the federal level. Each state, each region is different. Local rule is best rule. Self-rule, local rule is best. One region doesn't see eye to eye with another region. It could be based upon geographical differences. It could be based upon the stock that are occupied there. My God, some of the states were started with inmates. Georgia was started with inmates a long time ago. You have to recognize that. That's the stock they have. Oh, you can't hold that against them. Well, we can have standards. And the standards, we need to hold to those. So if you're going to commit the crimes, fine. But these politicians that we have that have been selling us out, that have isolated and insulated themselves from any sort of accountability, that needs to end now. We need to actually take all of them out of office, send them packing, send them home, stop all pay and benefits, void the contracts because they have failed to uphold their oaths of office. They voided the contract. And then we tell the state governments to form organic state governments, not these corporations set up for profit. And then once they have a proper state government, we tell them, fine, send 2 senators from your state legislature to represent your state government in the capital of America. And by the way, you'll pay them. We're not going to pay them. They're your senators. They're working for you. They need to know who they're working for. And it should return back to the point where you can fire them at any time you want. They're not elected to the Senate directly. They come from the state legislators to which they were directly elected by the people of the state. When the states have representation, then you can start to get your republic back. Then I'd send all these damn congressmen packing as well and tell them, no more pay, no more benefits. We're taking away all that stuff. You violated your oath of office, the contract. You nullified it. You voided it. And then we tell the state, send us your congressmen, congresswomen. They're volunteering their time. We're looking for successful people that know how to manage the purse, that know how to manage budgets, that have had the success that's proof that they can do that. So they will be responsible with our monies, with our purse strings. And when they can no longer afford to support themselves, they run out of money, there's no need for term limits. They go home. Somebody else goes into the office. It's the way it was designed. You might think, "My, that's a wonderful idea." They argued about that for a long time. And then your Supreme Court justices were never appointed for life. If they had any bad behavior, they were gone. Most of these boys and girls on the Supreme Court got bad behavior, believe me, and they should be gone. And you need to go back to the separation of powers. You do that by restoring your original 13th Amendment, which called for the separation of powers, which meant the members of your judiciary, which are the officers of the court, which are your attorneys, could not cross over and be in the executive or legislative branches. They have a legal, technical expertise, and they need to be isolated to the courts. And anyone who's a member of the Bar Association is stripped of any and all citizenship in these states. Yeah, I realize that makes a mess of things, but that's all right. The attorneys caused this mess as far as I'm concerned. And they need to argue intellectually, in public, in open court maybe even, as to how they can remedy this situation. They certainly can't be beholden to the British Association, the British Accreditation, Registry, Regency, whatever the hell it is. They can't be beholden to having a foreign allegiance and yet have an allegiance to us. No wonder we got into trouble. And your medical doctors, no more medical monopolies. I know you're out there saying, well, everybody's got a right to medical care. Look, that's an inferior system. There are better treatment systems. We had far more health care, better health care a century ago, a little more than about a century ago. That's when things went haywire. But then you got your Rockefellers, members of the tribe, members of the Khazarian mafia that runs the United States of America today. What are you going to do about them? Look, I leave that in your hands. We're way over an hour. I think you're capable of figuring it out. Now, whether or not you can conduct yourself in a civil manner and make it happen, I don't think you can do it. Can you? I'm throwing the gauntlet down. If you can't rule yourself, then who can rule you? Yahweh. Open the Bible up. Buy one of my Bibles down below. It's the best one available. Learn his name, Yahweh. The evil ones took his name out. They edited and twisted up that Bible from here to kingdom come so they could take us over. They created a bunch of weird religions out of it. A lot of man-made religions. You need to just read it for yourself. You don't need to go to these churches. My God, I turn into the radio and I can't believe these guys still get airtime, talk in that pompous fashion, so full of themselves and so, lording it over the others, the rest of us, because, well, you know. Look, bless Yahweh. Yahweh bless you. Do your part to make your little square, your little area, good again. Remind people of the good. Get in their face if you have to and tell them it's not right. And if they don't understand what right is, then tell them what right is. And if they won't adhere to doing what's right, then walk off from them and have nothing to do with them. You can't coexist with the devils, can you? How do you like where that's gotten to you now? Are they respecting your values? Are they giving you a fair shake? Yahweh bless.